Good evening. Today I want to talk about something we all face at some point in our lives: pressure. Those moments when the weight feels too heavy, when it seems like life is coming at us from every angle. But let me tell you something. Pressure is not a sign that you're defeated. It's a sign that you're destined. Pressure is often seen as something to avoid, something that brings discomfort and stress. But what if we saw it differently? What if we saw pressure as a gift, as an opportunity to grow, as the very thing that reveals the potential hidden inside us? The truth is, pressure has a way of drawing out strength, courage, and abilities that we didn't even know we had. It's not meant to destroy us. It's meant to refine us, to prepare us for the next level, to unlock the greatness that God has already placed within us. Think about how diamonds are formed. They don't come from ideal conditions. They come from intense heat and unimaginable pressure. What begins as a simple piece of carbon deep within the earth is transformed into one of the most valuable and beautiful substances on the planet. The pressure doesn't diminish the carbon, it enhances it. It forces the potential that was always there to come to the surface. Without the pressure, the diamond would never exist. And in the same way, without the pressures of life, many of the gifts and talents within us would never come to life. Sometimes, when we face pressure, our first instinct is to want to escape it. We pray for the challenge to be removed or for the situation to change. But what we often don't realize is that the pressure we're feeling is part of God's plan to prepare us for something greater. It's in the moments when we feel stretched, when we're pushed beyond our limits, that our true potential begins to emerge. The pressure isn't there to break us, it's there to build us. Look back on your own life. Think about the moments that shaped you the most, the seasons where you grew in ways you didn't think were possible. Chances are those moments didn't come when everything was easy and smooth. They came during times of difficulty, when the weight of life felt heavy, when you were navigating challenges you never saw coming. It was in those moments of pressure that you discovered strength you didn't know you had. You learned resilience, perseverance, and faith. You tapped into a deeper level of creativity, resourcefulness, and determination. Pressure has a way of stretching us, of forcing us out of our comfort zones. It makes us dig deep, rely on God, and discover what we're truly capable of. It's in the middle of pressure that new ideas are born, new strengths are developed, and new opportunities arise. It's often in the hardest seasons of life that the most beautiful transformations take place. But here's the key: how we respond to pressure matters. We can either let it crush us, or we can let it propel us forward. We can choose to see pressure as a problem, or we can see it as preparation. When we shift our perspective and recognize that pressure is part of the process, we stop resisting it and start embracing it. We realize that God wouldn't allow us to go through something unless He had a purpose for it. Just like the diamond, you have potential inside of you that's waiting to be revealed. It's waiting for the right conditions, the right season, the right kind of pressure to bring it out. So don't be discouraged when you face challenges. Don't shrink back when the weight feels heavy. Instead, remind yourself that this is your opportunity to grow, to shine, to become everything God created you. The next time you feel the pressure rising, don't see it as a sign of failure or defeat. See it as a sign that you're on the verge of breakthrough. Know that God is working in you and through you. He's using the pressure to shape you, to refine you, to bring out your best. You have more in you than you realize, and the pressure is simply God's way of drawing it out. Trials are an inevitable part of life. We all face seasons of hardship, moments of uncertainty, and circumstances that push us to our limits. But what if we begin to view these trials not as setbacks, but as setups for something greater? What if we recognize that every challenge we face is an opportunity for God to work in us, shape us, and transform us into who we're meant to be? God doesn't waste anything, not a single tear, not a single disappointment, not a single struggle. Every trial has a purpose, and in His hands it becomes a tool for transformation. When we face trials, our first reaction is often to ask, why is this happening to me? But what if the better question is, what is God trying to teach me? You see, trials have a way of refining us, of revealing things within us that we might not even realize need to change. Maybe it's a habit, an attitude, or a perspective that's holding us back. God can use those difficult moments to bring these things to the surface, not to condemn us, but to heal us, to grow us, to make us more like Him. Think about a potter working with clay. The clay starts off formless, rough, and unrefined. But the potter sees its potential. He presses on it, stretches it, and sometimes even breaks it down to rebuild it again. It's not because the potter wants to harm the clay. It's because he has a vision for what the clay can become. In the same way, God is the potter and we are the clay. The trials we face are part of His process of shaping us into the masterpiece He knows we can be. The Bible is full of examples of people who experienced transformation through trials. Joseph was betrayed by his brother, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned. Yet, through those trials, God was preparing him to save an entire nation from famine. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, but it was in that season of trial that God prepared him to lead His people to freedom. Even Jesus Himself endured the ultimate trial on the cross, and through it, He brought salvation to the world. Each of these stories reminds us that trials are not the end. They are the beginning of something greater. One of the most beautiful things about God is that He doesn't just transform our circumstances, He transforms us. Trials teach us to rely on Him, to trust His timing, and to lean into His grace. They deepen our faith and strengthen our character. They remind us that we are not in control, but we serve a God who is. And as we walk through those trials, we begin to see His faithfulness in ways we never could have imagined. We realize that even in the hardest moment, He is with us, guiding us and working all things together for our good. Sometimes the transformation God is bringing about isn't just for us, it's for others too. Your story, your struggle, your victory can become a testimony that inspires and encourages someone else. The trial you're facing today might be the very thing that equips you to help someone else tomorrow. God never wastes a trial. He uses them to build His kingdom, to draw us closer to Him, and to shine His light through us. So, if you're in the middle of a trial right now, take heart. Know that it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. God is not punishing you, He's preparing you. He's using this season to strengthen your faith, to deepen your trust, and to transform you into who He created you to be. It may not make sense right now, and it may not feel good in the moment, but trust that God is at work. The trial is temporary, but the transformation is eternal. And when you come out on the other side, you look back and see that it wasn't just a trial, it was a turning point. It was God's way of leading you into His purpose, His plan, and His promise for your life. Faith is one of the most powerful forces in our lives. It gives us hope when all seems lost, peace in the middle of chaos, and strength to keep moving forward when we feel like giving up. But faith isn't something that grows when everything is easy and smooth. Faith is strengthened in adversity. It's in the hard times, the moments of uncertainty, in the seasons of struggle, that our trust in God is tested and deepened. Without adversity, faith remains unchallenged, and an unchallenged faith cannot grow. When life is good, it's easy to trust in God. It's easy to say, I have faith when the bills are paid, the relationships are strong, and the path ahead is clear. But what about when the unexpected happens? What about when the storms of life roll in, when the prayers seem unanswered, when the weight feels too heavy to bear? It's in those moments when we have no choice but to lean fully on God, that our faith begins to take root in a deeper way. Adversity has a way of stripping away our illusions of control. It reminds us of our limitations and brings us face to face with the reality that we cannot navigate life on our own. And while that can feel overwhelming, it's also a gift, because it's in those moments of surrender when we acknowledge our need for God that we experience His presence and His power like never before. Faith isn't about having all the answers or knowing what's ahead. It's about trusting the one who does. Consider the story of the disciples caught in a storm on the Sea of Galilee. As the waves crashed around them, they were terrified. Even though Jesus was in the boat with them, their fear overtook their faith. But in the midst of the storm, Jesus stood and calmed the wind and the waves with a simple command. That moment wasn't just about the storm, it was about their faith. They saw firsthand that even in the most terrifying circumstances, Jesus was in control. The storm strengthened their trust in Him, showing them that His power was greater than anything they could face. In our own lives, adversity can feel like that storm. It shakes us, it tests us, and it pushes us to the edge of what we think we can handle. But it also gives us the opportunity to see God's faithfulness in a way we never could in calmer times. When we step out in faith during adversity, when we choose to trust God even when we can't see the outcome, it's like a spiritual workout. Our faith muscles grow stronger, our roots grow deeper, and our confidence in God's goodness becomes unshakable. Adversity also has a way of drawing us closer to God. When everything is going well, it's easy to go through the motions, to rely on our own strength, and to take God's blessings for granted. But when we face challenges, we're reminded of how much we need Him. It's in those moments of prayer, of crying out to Him, of seeking His guidance, that our relationship with Him deepens. We begin to experience His peace and His comfort and His presence in a way that transforms us. Faith is not about avoiding adversity. It's about walking through it with confidence that God is with us. It's about believing that He is bigger than the challenges we face, that He has a purpose for our pain, and that He is working all things together for our good. It's about trusting that even when we can't see the way forward, He is guiding our steps. So if you're walking through adversity right now, hold on to your faith. It might feel small, like a tiny seed, but remember that even a mustard seed of faith can move mountains. Trust that God is using this season to grow you, to strengthen you, and to draw you closer to Him. And as you keep walking, as you keep believing, you'll look back and realize that the adversity didn't break you, it built you. It made your faith stronger, your hope brighter, and your trust in God deeper than ever before. Our perspective is one of the most powerful tools we possess. It shapes how we see the world, how we interpret our circumstances, and how we respond to challenges. The same situation can either be a roadblock or an opportunity, depending on how we choose to view it. Perspective isn't just about what happens to us. It's about how we frame what happens to us. And the good news is, no matter what life throws our way, we have the ability to choose our perspective. Life is full of ups and downs. There are moments of joy and triumph, and there are moments of struggle and hardship. But the way we perceive those moments can make all the difference. Two people can face the same challenge, but their outcomes can be vastly different depending on their perspective. One might see failure and give up, while the other sees a lesson and grows stronger. That's the power of perspective. It has the ability to transform our challenges into stepping stones. Take, for example, the story of David and Goliath. Most people looked at Goliath and saw an unbeatable giant, someone far too powerful to defeat. But David saw something different. He didn't focus on the size of the giant. He focused on the size of his God. His perspective wasn't shaped by fear. It was shaped by faith. And because of that, he was able to step into a seemingly impossible situation and achieve victory. The situation didn't change. Goliath was still a giant, but David's perspective changed everything. In our own lives, it's easy to get caught up in what's wrong. We see the obstacles, the setbacks, the difficulties, and they can start to feel overwhelming. But when we shift our focus, when we choose to look at what's right, at what's possible, at what God is doing behind the scenes, everything begins to change. Perspective doesn't mean denying the challenges we face. It means choosing to see them through a lens of hope and faith. The Apostle Paul is another example of someone who understood the power of perspective. He endured hardships most of us can't even imagine. Imprisonment, beatings, shipwrecks, and constant opposition. Yet, in the midst of it all, he wrote about joy, about hope, about pressing on toward the goal. How could he do that? It was his perspective. Paul didn't see his trials as reasons to give up. He saw them as opportunities to grow closer to God, to strengthen his faith, and to fulfill his purpose. He understood that his current circumstances were temporary, but the work God was doing in and through him was eternal. Perspective also matters because it shapes our attitude, and our attitude influences our actions. When we choose to see challenges as opportunities, we approach them with a spirit of determination and resilience. We stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? How is God using this to prepare me for what's next? That shift in mindset can turn even the hardest seasons into times of growth and transformation. It's important to remember that our perspective is a choice. We may not be able to control what happens to us, but we can control how we see it. We can choose to focus on the negative, or we can choose to look for the positive. We can dwell on what's missing, or we can be grateful for what we have. We can let fear and doubt cloud our vision, or we can fix our eyes on God and trust that He is in control. When we choose to see life through the lens of faith, everything changes. We begin to notice God's hand at work, even in the small things. We start to see challenges as opportunities for growth. We find joy in the midst of struggle and peace in the midst of uncertainty. Our perspective doesn't just change how we see the world, it changes how we live in it. So no matter what you're facing today, take a moment to step back and adjust your perspective. Instead of focusing on the size of the problem, focus on the size of your God. Instead of dwelling on what's wrong, look for what's right. Instead of seeing an obstacle, look for an opportunity. When you change your perspective, you change your life. And when you choose to see through the eyes of faith, you'll discover that there's nothing too big for God to handle and no situation He can't use for your good. Victory is something we all long for, a sense of accomplishment, a breakthrough, a moment where all the hard work and struggle finally pays off. But victory doesn't come without a journey, and that journey often involves perseverance. Perseverance is the ability to keep going, to push through when it feels like giving up would be easier. It's the determination to hold on, even when the odds seem stacked against you. And while the road of perseverance may not always be easy, it's the road that leads to victory. Life has a way of testing us. It puts challenges in our path that stretch us, obstacles that seem immovable, and situations that feel impossible. In those moments, it's tempting to stop, to let frustration or exhaustion convince us that it's just not worth it. But the truth is, the breakthrough we're seeking often lies just on the other side of that struggle. The moments when we feel like we can't go on are often the moments when we're closest to the victory. Perseverance is what bridges the gap between where we are and where we want to be. Look at any story of success or triumph, and you'll find perseverance at the core. Think about the story of Noah. God gave him the enormous task of building an ark to prepare for a flood. something that must have seemed absurd to those around him. For years, Noah worked, likely facing ridicule and doubt, but he didn't give up. He persevered, and because of his faithfulness, he and his family were saved. The flood wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. His perseverance led to victory, not just for him, but for generations to come. The same principle applies to our own lives. Whether it's a dream we're pursuing, a relationship we're trying to heal, or a challenge we're trying to overcome, perseverance is key. It's not about never stumbling or never feeling weary. It's about continuing to move forward, even if it's just one small step at a time. Perseverance isn't glamorous. It's often quiet, steady, and unseen. It's choosing to show up when you don't feel like it, to pray when you don't see answers, to trust when you don't understand. The Bible reminds us that perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. It's through the trials, the setbacks, and the waiting that we're refined and strengthened. Every time we choose to press on, we're building resilience. We're developing the kind of faith that isn't easily shaken, the kind of trust in God that says, I may not see it yet, but I believe it's coming. Victory isn't just about achieving the goal, it's about who we become along the way. Think about the story of the Israelites as they marched around the walls of Jericho. For 6 days they marched without any visible sign of progress. On the seventh day, they marched 7 times, still seeing no change. It wasn't until the very end, after their obedience and perseverance, that the walls finally came down. Imagine if they had stopped on the 6th day, or even the 6th lap of the 7th day, they would have missed the victory that was right around the corner. That story is a reminder that sometimes the breakthrough comes when we least expect it. But it requires us to keep going, to stay faithful, to trust in God's timing. Victory is not just about reaching the finish line. It's about the journey that gets us there. It's about the lessons we learn, the strength we gain, and the faith we build along the way. When we persevere, we demonstrate our trust in God's plan and our belief that His promises are worth holding on to. And the amazing thing about God is that He doesn't just meet us at the finish line. He walks with us every step of the way. If you're in a season where it feels hard to keep going, know that you're not alone. God sees your effort, your struggle, your faithfulness, and He promises that your labor is not in vain. The victory may not look like what you expected, and it may not come when you want it to, but it will come. And when it does, you'll see that every step, every tear, and every moment of perseverance was worth it. So keep going. Don't stop now. The victory you've been praying for, the breakthrough you've been waiting for is on the other side of perseverance. Trust that God is working even when you can't see it, and know that He has a victory waiting for you that is greater than anything you could imagine. Life has a way of placing us in situations where the pressure feels almost unbearable. Deadlines loom, expectations rise, challenges seem to pile on, and it feels like the weight of the world is resting squarely on your shoulders. But here's the truth. You are equipped to thrive under pressure. You have within you everything you need to not just survive, but to rise, to flourish, and to grow stronger in the face of adversity. God has designed you with purpose, equipped you with gifts, and placed within you a strength that is revealed most powerfully under pressure. Pressure has a way of exposing what's inside of us. It's like a diamond being formed. A diamond doesn't become a diamond without extreme pressure and heat. What begins as a lump of carbon is transformed into something radiant and valuable. The process isn't easy or quick, but it's necessary. The same is true for us. The pressures of life are not meant to break us. They are meant to refine us. They reveal the strength, resilience, and potential that God has placed within us. When you face moments of pressure, it's easy to feel unprepared or inadequate. But God never places you in a situation without giving you the tools to navigate. You might not see it in the moment, but every experience, every lesson, and every trial you've been through has prepared you for where you are right now. The skills you've developed, the faith you've grown, and the wisdom you've gained are all part of God's plan to equip you. You're not walking into your challenges empty-handed. You're carrying the strength of everything you've overcome and the promise that God is with you every step of the way. Pressure also has a way of pushing us out of our comfort zones, and while that might feel uncomfortable, it's often where the greatest growth happens. Think about the eagle teaching its young to fly. The eaglet is pushed out of the nest, forced to spread its wings, and in the process, it discovers its ability to soar. The pressure of that moment reveals a capability that was there all along, waiting to be activated. You might be facing a situation that feels overwhelming, but it could be the very thing that pushes you to discover your strength, your purpose, and your potential. It's important to remember that thriving under pressure doesn't mean doing it all on your own. God never intended for us to carry the weight of life's challenges alone. He promises to be our source of strength, our refuge, and our guide. Wow! When the pressure feels too great, that's the moment to lean into Him. His grace is sufficient. His power is made perfect in weakness, and His peace can calm even the most chaotic situations. Thriving under pressure isn't about relying on your own strength. It's about drawing from the unlimited strength of the one who created you. Pressure can also bring clarity. In the midst of challenges, we often find ourselves focusing on what truly matters. The distractions fade and we're reminded of our priorities, our values, and our purpose. Pressure refines not just who we are, but also how we see the world. It helps us let go of what's unnecessary and hold on to what's eternal. It's in these moments that we often discover a deeper sense of gratitude, faith, and perspective. You are not defined by the pressure you face. You are defined by how you respond to it. And because you are equipped, you can face pressure with confidence. You can step into challenges knowing that you are capable, that you are prepared, and that you are backed by a God who has never failed. The next time you feel overwhelmed, remind yourself that this is not the end. It's the beginning of something new. Pressure is not a signal to quit. It's a signal to rise. You are being prepared for greater things, strengthened for higher levels, and refined for a purpose that goes beyond what you can see right now. So take heart. You are not crushed by the weight of the pressure. You are being shaped by it. You are stronger than you think, more capable than you realize, and more equipped than you know. Trust in God's plan. Lean into His strength and embrace the process. Because when the pressure lifts, you'll see the growth, the transformation, and the victory that we're always waiting on the other side. You are equipped to thrive, not in spite of the pressure, but because of it.